Mr. Chairman. Members, securing our border is a top priority for Texas, and private landowners along the Texas-Mexico border are on the front lines of this challenge. Many of them want to play a role in strengthening border security, but perceive barriers to doing so. HB 1836 seeks to bridge that gap by having the General Land Office study ways to increase private landowner participation in border security efforts. The study will identify methods to improve cooperation between property owners and law enforcement for security efforts and explore incentives for landowners who assist in these efforts. By collaborating with key state agencies and the Texans who know the land best, our landowners, this bill takes a comprehensive approach to enhancing border security through public-private partnerships. Rather than relying solely on state decisions, it encourages practical, cooperative solutions that leverage local insight to build a stronger, more effective strategy for securing our border. I can help answer any questions if y'all have any.
Okay, members, are there any questions for Chairman Guillen? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, for bringing the bill and the idea about it. My question on the General Land Office, did you have any costs on that?
You got a zero fiscal note.
Zero? Okay.
Yep. Yep, it's attached. No significant fiscal implication the state has anticipated. We worked with the GLO and some of these agencies to, and putting the bill together.
I'm probably going to get that from Commissioner Buckingham.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Representative McLaughlin?
So, but basically, what your bill is just enhancing for us to work with the landowner instead of trying to go and use eminent domain or so forth. So we have a working relationship instead of a fighting
Absolutely.
relationship.
Yes, as you know, we specifically in doing what we've been doing, building the wall and other things, we haven't used eminent domain as a state. And our first thought was we wanted to do a bill about incentivizing landowners somehow, some way, in cooperating with the government, with the state, in doing some of these things. And we started drafting a bill, to that effect. And then we thought, well, you know what, we should have a better, more thorough study and come up with a full list of recommendations that we could then go through, and we thought that would be a better way to go about it.
No, I like the bill. Thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Holt.
Hi, thank you for this bill. I appreciate that. I'm just curious of the landowners, the actual landowners, have they called for this, or is this just something that you're wanting to facilitate?
So if you talk to the Facilities Commission, the Facilities Commission has been the agency that has been in charge of doing the landowner agreements to build the wall. And they've, of course, had struggled tremendously to try to get agreements. I mean, just like in any other endeavor like this, you would expect that.
Sure.
And so we've talked for years about somehow incentivizing these landowners more so than what we're already doing, because in some cases in some of these agreements we're fixing roads to get to these places. We're obviously giving them access to roads along the fence lines, and so there are some kind of built-in incentives. I do have another set of bills and a constitutional amendment where we're making sure that they don't get taxed on anything that goes on their property, because remember that these projects are that remains their property, and this is just easement. This is just an easement that they give over to the state. So this is just exploring ways to find even more cooperation than we've been able to find, so that we can prepare for the future.
Sure, and I think a lot of people, sometimes they just want to be heard.
Absolutely.
And I think this is a great avenue for that. So thank you for bringing this bill up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, members, any other questions? All right, we'll reserve your right to close.
Thank you.
Chair calls Charles Maley. We show you registered as Charles Maley, testifying on behalf of yourself and the South Texas Property Rights Association, and you're for the bill, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hefner and members. On behalf of South Texas Property Rights Association and our membership scattered across the 35 to 40 million acres known as South Texas, specifically our members along the Texas-Mexico border, what better thing could we ask than a study to talk about incentivizing cooperation between the state and private property owners rather than trying to fight off eminent domain and a taking of our properties. Representative Holt, to your point earlier, you had asked about did landowners ask for this? In some cases, yes. And what we have found in the experience with even some of our members, that in the days before the state was trying to build some of the infrastructure and wall, we have members that were opposed to a federal wall because the feds were trying to come in and take. They were used in eminent domain. In some of those cases are even still tied up in court. When the state, on the other hand, decided, and this body decided that they weren't going to be using eminent domain to do some of these infrastructure projects, we had members that had been opposed to border security and wall and everything else that signed up their property to participate in infrastructure projects because it was now voluntary. And so it did move the needle. And so a study to see how to do that better and cooperation between the state and private landowners, you know, who knows? Maybe we'll have broad implications in other areas, but right now it's a great help. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Representative Louderback.
Mr. Maley, I appreciate you coming up here, as you've been a regular contributor for many years here to the session. But can you describe what the value of this bill with 1836 would bring to the table? Maybe describe some of the things that some of the problems that you've experienced over the last 4 years on your property as a strong property rights person, as I know you are. Can you give us a little brief synopsis of something like that? So the value of this of a bill like this, can you explain that a little bit?
So I think it goes back to again, a point that came up earlier, and that is being heard. I mean, having the ability to express what each of us and each of our members and each of the landowners along the border are experiencing, and having the state take that data point and being able to establish this or other programs in the future that work off voluntary participation. As far as what our members experience in these areas, of course, they have in the past have had heavy traffic that they've had to deal with. A lot of them don't want that traffic on their property, but neither do they want to be subject to an eminent domain type proceeding in order to be protected from the traffic that they've experienced. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. A lot of our members, literally did not want to be trampled on, but at the same time, they wanted to figure out if there was a voluntary avenue. And so I think that's the biggest part of this, is that it furthers that promise that the legislature has made to landowners to pursue security, but not through eminent domain. And I don't see much in the way of downside. From a cost standpoint, I would think that there would be a cost benefit to the state, because it's going to cost the state less to put infrastructure in place if they're not having to fight with landowners to get it placed. And so I think in the end, it's going to actually save us money if we get these agreements going.
Thank you, sir.
Vice Chair Lopez.
Yeah, thank you for your testimony. I appreciate your perspective. And I mean, I hear your comments, tend to be the majority of, and in most cases, the landowners and things of that nature, which obviously by the statement says there probably are some that do not support it, maybe a minority of folks that would prefer not to have any kind of oversight, continue to maintain full control over their land. What would be some of the rationale for them to feel that way? And here's my thought, right? I don't want to lead you into a response, but I'm kind of going, oftentimes, the vast majority of people want one thing and the handful that don't. In that group, there are oftentimes nefarious or, things that we would not think as being honorable. driving their decision. Do you think this study would identify some of those things and hope to overcome them?
I think that's, for me, that's looking past where this bill's intent is, and when I said a majority would agree, that minority under the bill obviously has the right to not participate in the discussion even, if they choose to. Obviously, they have the right to turn down the GLO in conversations and any research that might be there. And you're gonna have those landowners that may actually support border security or voluntary participation, but they just don't wanna have a conversation with the government at all. And so you might find people that might object to the application of this particular piece of legislation. As far as a general policy of border security, I think you already made the point that there's some people that are gonna be holdouts for whatever reason, whether that's personal conscience or whether that's nefarious intent, given that it is a voluntary process that we have with the state, they have that right to abstain. And I think that that's an appropriate thing for them in their situations and to make that choice.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your comments and your perspective.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Members, we have 2 resource witnesses here from the General Land Office. If they have any questions, would y'all like for me to call them up? Are y'all good? Okay, if there's no one else wishing to speak on for or against House Bill 1836, Chair recognizes Chairman Guillen to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's no further questions, I ask for your favorable consideration.
All right, if there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Bill's left pending. Don't go anywhere. All right, Chair lays out House Bill 1837 and recognizes Chairman Guillen to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1837 is a focused effort to support law enforcement in the fight against fentanyl by improving training, collaboration, and officer safety. Fentanyl continues to be one of the deadliest threats in our state. It's increasingly trafficked by cartels and transnational gangs, particularly along the Texas-Mexico border, and its presence has led to a devastating rise in overdoses and deaths. HB 1837 responds to this crisis by establishing a fentanyl enforcement training program for local law enforcement officers. This program at DPS will prepare officers to safely handle fentanyl and reduce exposure risks, investigate and properly use opioid antagonists such as naloxone and, to help save lives. The bill also authorizes the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, TCOL, to recognize this training as part of continuing education requirements for peace officers. In addition to the training program, HB 1837 establishes the Lethal Opioid Poisoning Prevention Task Force, which will be composed of gubernatorial appointees from DPS, HHSC, and TCOL. The task force will compile data on fentanyl-related crimes in the border region, develop best practices for law enforcement and prosecutorial response, and study ways to increase the production and availability of opioid antagonists for law enforcement agencies. They'll submit its findings and recommendations to the governor and the legislature by December 1st of 2026. This sets up the framework to improve officer preparedness and strengthen our response to fentanyl-related crimes. HB 1837 is about equipping our law enforcement community with the tools and the knowledge and coordination they need to safely and effectively respond to this growing threat. A witness and stakeholder just approached me, and I agreed I'd work on some very minor additions in a sub that I would get back to you soon. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Representative Lauterback.
Chairman, thank you for this and for the overall training concept of this. But do you have an idea what you're looking at here when you're going to add to the peace officer training cycle? What are you looking at there?
So,
Just in your mind.
yeah, so we've talked to DPS about it, and we got a lot of positivity from them. They're ready and very much willing and able to do it within their existing footprint. We, as you know, Sheriff, this fentanyl is very, very dangerous, and how police officers, deputies handle fentanyl is very, very important to save their lives, not only how they deal with it with those that overdose and stuff like that. So by having this program, allowing it to be part of their annual training, and including it in those TCOL training continuing ed requirements, we believe this will, provide a thorough and ongoing training that will be able to adapt to the things that they're seeing each year, and should be a very helpful tool. We worked on some of these things last session and some fentanyl bills, and there was stuff that we thought that we didn't get done, and this is a response to that.
Well, as you know, adding to the training cycle is tough because it's got we got to put men and women in those cars to run them. So in the training cycle, you're looking at maybe every year, maybe we're in a 2-year training cycle. So every 2 years, you thinking?
Well, that's a good question. I believe
We can talk about it offline. Just
and I believe they would include it in the same times constraints that they are already doing the training.
okay. Well, that's important because it's going to add to the if you're going to add it to the training cycle of mandated courses, I think is where you're headed. It's the first question I'm going to get is how often and how many
I'll get you the answer by the
whether
time
it's
I
4
come back.
hours or what. So I appreciate you. Thanks.
All right.
Members, any other questions? All right, we'll reserve your right to close. All right, the chair calls Stephanie Turner. We show you registered as Stephanie Turner, testifying on behalf of yourself and Texans Against Fentanyl, and you're neutral on the bill?
Yes, so originally I put neutral because I wasn't sure about some of the classification, and now that the representative stated that he would do a substitution, I would like to change my testimony to for the bill.
Okay. Do what? 4 on the filed bill?
Yes.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, so thank you for your time. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Stephanie Turner, and I'm the founder of Texas Against Fentanyl. I founded this organization after losing my 19-year-old son, Tucker, to fentanyl poisoning in 2021. I was the mother who had never heard of illicit fentanyl. Fentanyl came into our country, and it wasn't talked about. People didn't have a full understanding, and it wasn't exclusive to parents or kids or victims who were using. It was across the board. It's law enforcement, it's recovery centers, it's everyone on the front lines of this, and it's through learning what other people are doing, what's working, how are we working these cases. For example, in 2017, Texas sent naloxone, the opioid antagonist, to law enforcement officers. They did not provide any training. With that, Narcan sat in closets, and law enforcement would show up on the scene to an unresponsive victim, not knowing how to identify the signs of a fentanyl poisoning. You have 4 to 8 minutes to respond. This is an example of how if the training is not provided first, then we are, we're behind the ball and we're not being effective how we could. So as being a mother who is very mad and angry that I didn't have this information to save my son, I fought last legislative session getting House Bill 3908 passed. It's called Tucker's Law, and it requires fentanyl education in grades 6 through 12 in Texas. That is one of the first of 4 states that passed this law. What I found from this work is it was another unfunded mandate, and we have looked at what we have passed in other states, how we're moving as a country on this fentanyl topic, and what we can learn and where we go wrong and how to, essentially save more lives. So when I looked at this bill, and part of my work is I am part of a fentanyl task force. I show up on the death scenes with law enforcement when people have passed away from fentanyl. So I'm very much on the front lines of this in many different areas. My concern was this classification of a PG1 or a PG1B. Now just to expand on this, a PG1 is cocaine, heroin, meth. A PG1B is a fentanyl classification. That's all on its own. My recommendation to the representative was that we look to expand that to a PG1 and a PG1B because overdoses are continuing to happen with cocaine and methamphetamine. So that was something that the murder law from last session, House Bill 4, was exclusive to fentanyl, but now we're having people who are overdosing from cocaine and meth, and we're looking at maybe we need to look at what does that classification look like. So with this bill in particular, that was a big concern of mine, is that I wanted it to be a PG1 and a PG1B, meaning that we're doing this training for all law enforcement on any overdose case, so they're all work the same. My other concern about this is there's a lot of work that's being done and people on the front lines, and some I guess I would say from experience, a person who understands this crisis better than a lot of people is me. I've lived it, I walked through it with my son and ultimately led to his death. Since then, it's been our partnerships with law enforcement. I train the Texas narcotics officers. I've done some TCOL trainings with some other officers that were certified, so I'm very much on the front lines of this. And it's real life stories. And we have directors across the state of Texas, so I'm not just representing Central Texas, I'm representing the whole state of Texas. And then all of our directors are working with law enforcement, whether it's DPS, their local law enforcement, or the DEA. We're also partnered with them. So my recommendation is that we look to include people like us, people who have those real life stories, where we can talk to law enforcement and they can understand that these aren't just overdose cases, these are drug addicts that, deserve to die, so to say. It's when you bring that real life perspective in that they can better understand these are real life families that are losing their children in the night in their bedrooms. So I would recommend that. And then also with these investigations on this TCOL training, I would hope that they would consider bringing those lead investigators who are working these cases as a major contributor in creating these trainings, because it is through that on the front lines, there's law enforcement departments that still don't know how to identify a fentanyl pill. And think about that, it's these small towns, they might not have narcotics departments. We have to look at that training, and I want those people who are successful in their investigations, successful in their convictions, bring that and have them be the main people in bringing this training. So with that, I think those are all my main points that I really wanted to point out, and just to be a voice for the civilian side of this, and also continue to build our partnerships and relationships with you guys, and bring that information forward and make sure that this is represented correctly and that we can save lives as fast as possible. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Members, any questions?
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for your testimony. All right, is there anyone else wishing to speak on, for, or against House Bill 1837? If not, Chair recognizes Chairman Ginn to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow up, this just establishes the training program. It doesn't require the officers to take it, but it is an option once it's created, and when they take it, it counts towards their credit hours. And so locally, if, for example, the department wants to have them take it every 2 or 3 years, they can say, hey, we want to make sure you take that course every 3rd year or whatever, but it would be a local decision. This is now just an option that's available to them.
Added to the curriculum.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. No other questions? All right. If not, the Chair if there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. The bill is left pending.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. All right, the Chair lays out